Welcome to the WangHiro podcast, where we answer Malaysians' burning questions about personal finance with fact-based answers.
While we can't turn back time and correct all our money mistakes we made in our 20s, what we can do is the next best thing, which is to act as a warning sign for the 20-year-olds today about everything we did wrong so you can do it right. Our young and dumb money mistakes are your lessons for getting rich. Welcome back to WangHiro with me, Louis, and my co-host, John. And today we talk about the money mistakes we and a lot of people in their 20s make that actually set them back from their financial goals when they hit their 30s, 40s, and beyond. So, John, what would you say is your absolutely biggest financial mistake that you made in your 20s?
Buying my first house.
Oh, I mean, a lot of people would think that is not a mistake, though, John.
Correct.
Why would you think it's a mistake?
And I actually used that as a shock to start the introduction of this topic, because it will first hit them and then they'll say, that's very against conventional wisdom.
Yep, correct.
Yeah, and I think that's where it gets people to be curious rather than, you see, sometimes when you answer straight off the bat, it doesn't create a curiosity. So and in my previous self, I would just like go on and explain. Now it's just I answer that and then I pause just to see the effect.
Factor, right?
Yeah, for the shock factor. What about you, Louis? What was your biggest mistake?
For me, because when I was very young, I already wanted to start my own business. So I think that's quite a common thing these days among young people to start their own business, and I think too eager to start my own business, make $1 million ringgit or dollars, that I actually partner with the wrong people, got scammed in between. So I think when I look back, right, that was like a good portion of my at that time, like if you're just starting out with your first paycheck, that really took out all of my savings, Yeah. So I think it's quite equivalent to like your house. I think I remember that in the previous episode, you're saying like all the money got tied up in the house, right?
Correct.
Just to pay off, like the loans and everything. Yeah.
A lot of people don't see what we call, I think that I like this term, it's called phantom cost. So it's like ghost cost. Ghost cost, I think, is more difficult to pronounce, but phantom cost is a nice roll of the tongue, because you made a mistake of partnering wrong people, same as me in my previous businesses as well. And a lot of these phantom costs of restarting again, getting the partnership closing the chapter and moving on, right? These phantom costs are unseen. And usually it only takes it requires you to go through experiences or either through a mentor. I think even through a mentor, it's not easy to avoid, Louis. I think some of these mistakes, you just have to go through the flow yourself, only then to really understand and experience it.
Or listen to this episode.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully. I just wish that, someone would have told me not to do those things, go headstrong. But back then, this was imagine like
20 years ago? No, 15.
15 years ago, internet wasn't, so fast in Malaysia. We don't have so many podcasts. Podcast was, I think, even globally at that time, was like a new phenomena that was bringing up people like, podcast. But now it's quite common, right? So hopefully by us sharing these very bad and, decisions, our young audience can also learn from it. So back to your mistake, John, what made you do it? Like, was it like you feeling like it's a good milestone to hit as a young person?
Yes, and more importantly was I think there's this common notion that when you get a job, when your parents actually got a job and they got a job in a good corporation, let's say an MNC or the civil service, it's usually a cradle to the grave kind of job.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was over the moon when I got a job in Shell. I saw the promotions, saw the paycheck coming in, and I said, okay. And I'm quite sorry?
You made it.
Yeah, I made it, And it was quite what do you call it? I was quite a thrifty person, knowing that I could adjust my budget and all that. I said, I could clearly afford this, right? And coming to a point where I said, okay, I could actually build my life around this career path, and it was quite a reasonable purchase at that point of time, because your parents would always tell you a car is not an asset, it's a liability, but a house always is an asset. Yes and no. Yes, to say that it's completely an asset is false, because it's a liability to you when you're not using it to generate income, where you're just staying and then you're taking on a huge liability for yourself. And no is also not an asset, is because you are burdened with a lot of phantom costs. Phantom costs that you don't see. Okay, for example, the house I bought was close to 500,000. Okay, for ease of math, renovation costs will easily take 15 to 20% of the property price already. Yeah, and that you can't take a loan for it.
Yeah. I mean, actually nowadays you can, right? You can. I don't know back then, but like nowadays, I noticed that people actually like can help you to put your renovation cost into your loan, which I don't think is a great idea, lah.
No,
But
it's
then,
even worse. You're compounding the interest.
compound over. Like imagine a 100K renovation cost after 30 years, right?
Correct.
Oh, I know this. Like, what exactly like happened that like at that moment you realize, oh, actually I made a mistake. Is there like a moment in time when you realize that?
I think it was like not just one particular moment, but accumulation, because once I started getting more and more, I would say, investment literate, I guess that's when I started understanding numbers better. I started understanding, actually, this is very key, Louis, risk reward asymmetry. So what do you mean? Money that you're putting up front today, there is a value in the future. And usually that value is lower because of inflation. But if you don't understand time value money, then you will not understand properly what we call risk reward. Meaning you have delayed gratification today, put it in an asset class where you get better returns out of it, and the rewards will be asymmetrical because of compound interest in the future. So that came about from years and years. It wasn't just one moment, but it was actually accumulation of building that investment literacy knowledge, and last but not least, understanding that actually debts are, a lot of people are afraid of taking debts.
Right. Yeah.
And usually when you take a housing loan debt, that's the biggest debt you ever take in your life. But once you grow in capacity, in your knowledge, you realize that actually rich people, they will take debt, but they take debt understanding the risk reward asymmetry very, very well. Meaning one debt will not wipe them out, but that debt can actually propel them to make 10x, 20x, 30x their money. I think that is very key. Risk reward asymmetry, time value money understanding. Yeah.
But now looking back, John, would you still buy a house, like, or would you like completely avoid buying a house, or actually buy a cheaper house? Which option would you actually take?
Rent.
Right.
Rent to a point where my property that I want to purchase should be roughly about 20% of my net worth, the house that I like, and I'll put a down payment and buy the house. So that means build your net worth to a point where you know that it's the purchase property price will roughly be 20 to 25% of your net worth. That's when, for me, it's a trigger point for me to buy a house. If not, before that, rent.
So I mean, like there's also all of that peer pressure, right? Or like emotional burden that comes from like maybe your parents telling you, oh, you haven't bought a house, you already have a stable job, why are you still renting? Renting is like throwing money, at someone else's property, or even like just throwing all your money away. But how do you deal with that as a young person?
I think putting it on a spreadsheet. A lot of people it's quite funny. People will analyze on Shopee or Lazada to buy a electrical appliance, like a laptop. They'll come out with spreadsheets till kingdom come, or analyze reviews or whatever till kingdom come. But when it comes to a house, I rarely see people really do the numbers. Probably out of 10. I don't know about you from your sample, but for me, I see that people will read review after review to buy a car. Okay, but in terms of property, I hardly see them sit down and put it into a spreadsheet. Really scrutinize the numbers, go through a renovation budget, which we did. Me and my wife, at that time, my fiance, we had 3 simulation scenarios for our renovation: phase 1, phase 2, phase 3.
Wow.
Yeah. what we could afford for phase 1, what we could afford for phase 2, what we could afford for phase 3. So yeah.
Okay. So if you're in your 20s, maybe that's something you can keep in mind when you're trying to buy a house. You know, it's I think on top of just the financial decision, you know, it's also very emotional decision, right, John?
Correct.
Okay, so those are our biggest mistakes. But other than these mistakes, I think we also see young people in the 20s make a lot of other mistakes, which I think we should also still talk about. So at least if you're in your 20s, you're aware of them. Okay. So John, I think this segment we kind of make it very fast. Okay. We say, okay, you know, these are some mistakes. But I'll go first, then we'll take turns. Okay.
Fire list.
Okay. Yeah, just very quick fire one. So, you know, if you want more information, you can always just comment below. We can see which are the ones that we should expand more on. Okay. So the first thing for me is not planning for retirement, thinking it can wait. Then it's too late. You know, so these are things that, you know, when I was in my 20s, a lot of my friends actually say, hey, YOLO, go for the trip first, go for what first, you know. Then at the end of the day, suddenly the 30s hit, suddenly there's like some emergencies they can't pay for.
Yep.
Go, John.
Okay, so next one, shy to ask payment for time and experience. A lot of people will come to you and say, hey, John, hey, Louis, or whatever your name is. They said, I'd like to pick your brain. Let's come out for coffee.
Oh, okay.
When you're young, right?
Mm.
You have a lot of time.
Mm.
Then you start having a family. Then you start having kids. Then you realize, wow, time is like toilet paper. It gets shorter and shorter when it comes to the end.
Toilet paper.
Okay. You think about it, right?
True. Get smaller.
Yes. So here comes, I think, a mistake that I made, and I hope it resonates with other people as well. Sometimes because it's a friend, people abuse that relationship and they use your time, right? The experience you gain, the amount of time and effort you take to actually gain that knowledge, but they just want to pick your brain for free. Okay, so nothing wrong to be asked to be paid for your values worth. So learn how to set boundaries. Learn how to not be ashamed to ask for time, for money. Obviously, don't go into like, you want to see me? Okay, 5 minutes straight away, right? But you know exactly what I mean, like Louis and the audience out there. The moment some of your friends just overstep the boundary and take you for granted,
especially the professional ones, right, John?
Precisely. Yeah.
Next. Okay, so the third one is going extreme YOLO, right? So I've talked a little bit about this in the first point, which is not planning for retirement. That's very bad already. But now you're going extreme YOLO. Oh, I'm still young. I can afford everything. You know, I can still earn. Like there's even this trend I saw on TikTok. They're like, I can earn money later, but I'm gonna be only 20 once. 25 once, and I want to go to Japan. I want to spend all this money, right? But again, we come back to how, you know, money, the value of money changes over time. And one of the things that I notice is actually there's a lot of age discrimination with jobs that you can take on in your 20s. You can't really do them so easily in your 30s because like sometimes it's just employer discriminating you, and sometimes if you waste all your money, again, no emergency fund, nothing. Okay, so the fifth one, John.
Not buying quality. Okay, so looking at my experience having my first child, obviously I was very not earning as much as I used to, right, at the peak of my career, and I wanted to like go cheap on a lot of things.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so you buy a stroller, and then you realize the stroller, the price, the 100 ringgit stroller versus the 500 ringgit stroller or the 1,000 ringgit stroller, there's a lot of difference in between. Okay, and you would think that, oh, you just buy something because they grow very fast and you don't use it. Then when you find it that you use it very often, then you realize, oh crap, why did I go for the cheap one? Right?
No.
Yeah, so I think I know sometimes it's expensive. Don't go nuts that you actually go and buy the most expensive stroller just because it's expensive. I think spend time to understand quality and value. So once you buy quality, even though it may be secondhand, so I give an example how you can apply this. Between a Proton and a secondhand Toyota, I would rather buy a secondhand Toyota than a Proton. Why? Parts reliability, all these kind of things. So I think you guys get the gist of it.
Efficiency.
Buy value rather than buy cheap. So there's a difference. There's a difference in between the two. I hope, and obviously I won't elaborate all here, but yeah, buy value over cheap.
Okay, so last one from both of us. So for me, not buying insurance because you think it's an expense. This is a big one, and I think when I was young, I was one of the few people who did have insurance, and all my friends, actually colleagues, were very surprised. They're like, "Oh, why should you buy that? That's for old people. You don't actually need it now." My insurance, I was like probably 10 or 15% of my income at that time, because it's few hundred ringgit and I only had an income of maybe 2,000 ringgit, right? But so they're like, oh, I don't even have enough to use. Why would I buy insurance? Then later, as we near our late 20s, a lot of people actually come to me to ask for some insurance recommendations, because they knew I was the one who bought it a lot. They were messaging me. My parents, some parents didn't even have insurance. So like, oh,
My
Louis,
goodness.
yeah, imagine that. So just one case in point is my dad actually had an infection about 4 years ago.
Mhm.
And without that insurance coverage, right, I think if you were to lay out the money, actually this is even scarier. Like, as we arrived to the hospital actually asked us if we would have money to pay. They just directly ask. If you don't have, they will not admit you.
Wow.
Yeah, private hospital, because emergency, right? So they're like, oh, do you have money or not? If not, like, they let you die one.
Wow.
So my mom was like, oh, we have insurance, and okay, got insurance, and make sure the insurance paperwork is done first before that. So I think this is one crucial thing. Even if you're young, you get to know insurance, buy insurance, make sure that you're covered for, especially your medical needs. Life insurance maybe not so when you're young. Yeah. The last one from you, John.
Okay. Related to one of your earlier points, which is too eager for business or investments. This one is not easy to teach or to learn from someone. I think only time and experience will tell you. Obviously, if you have the opportunity to get someone to coach you or to mentor you, all the more fantastic. Why? Trust me, let's just say if I used to have a business and life coach. I paid her quite substantially. But looking back at the value that she gave me was easily 5 times or 10 times the price I paid her. Why? Because the mistakes you make, especially in business, you make one wrong mistake, it sometimes can bankrupt you.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I think
I consider myself bankrupt at that time because I lost all my savings to the business.
Correct. But luckily you didn't have to go into liquidation and all that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thankfully.
So because people will usually go into two camps. They will fall into the camp where business is dangerous, never. So the over conservative, then they will never try, and then the over optimistic, in which they will burn too much because they don't understand risk reward. So I guess being too eager will make you fall into the over optimistic camp, and then at the same time, being too over conservative will force you to never give your dreams a try. I think this one is not that easy to learn and to teach, but more importantly, I think if you can get a mentor, you can get maybe a role model or someone. I think
right to John.
No. I think this one is the most difficult one. I don't consider myself successful as yet. My benchmarks are pretty high, but I think more importantly, if you can avoid the mistakes by learning from someone else's mistakes, that's even better, I guess.
Well, some people say, learn from dead people, right? Right. So all those biographies, I think, are quite useful. Napoleon.
Correct. Dead people are. I think Charlie Munger said this best, Louis. I'm best friends with the eminent dead.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, and especially one of the things that if the book has lasted so long, right, whatever they've written, then there's a lot of value in it. Correct. All right, so I think that's it. So I hope that our audience out there, if you're a young person, you've gained something out of our mistakes that we've made, and at least if we lost money, then it's your gain. Okay, so that wraps up today's episode of WangHiro. So guys, for the 20-something-year-olds out there, which of these mistakes set off an alarm in you? And what are you going to do about it? Leave your comments below. For those like me and John who are no longer 20 or 20-something, which mistakes did you make in your 20s and wish you didn't? Share them in the comments so other 20-somethings can benefit from your mistakes too. So thanks guys for tuning in today's episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notifications button to get updates from us. We'll see you again in the next episode. Bye-bye.